Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, March 15th, 10 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, which is where I am. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations to help them increase their sales, to do it with integrity and in a non-salesy way. And I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales. If you've been with us before, you know that almost every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we do a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. So buckle up, because I'm happy to introduce our guest today. He is the Strategic National Accounts Director at True Green. Please welcome Paul Yahnke. Good morning, Paul. Paul, can you hear me?
Hey, good morning. Hey, Jeff, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Your picture has become a little fuzzy. Your connection might be a little bad.
I'm sorry, but
okay, while Paul fixes his connection, we were talking fine before. He couldn't hear me before, and now I fixed that, and now we're having trouble with Paul. But at any rate, good morning, Bruce Cassaman. Good to see you here. He said, hopefully spring stays in the air. For those of you, while we wait for Paul to come back, it is the end of Q1 in 2 weeks. So if you're not a quarter of the way to your goal, now is the time to get busy. You want to be doing a couple of things. One of them is prospecting consistently and effectively. Just yesterday, I was asked, how can we set up our Q2? How can we get set up for a great Q2? And the answer I gave was this. For many of us, if not most of us, Q2 is already shot. Your Q2 is based on the work you've been doing in Q1, unless you have a short sales cycle. Anybody who has more than a 90-day sales cycle, you're certainly already working in Q3. What can you do, though? Well, certainly you can prospect consistently and effectively. You could be contacting everybody who's been telling you they want to think it over, and you can be staying in touch with the prospects that you do have and nurturing those accounts along so that when they're ready to buy from you, or when they're ready to buy from anybody that does what you do, hopefully they think of you. Way too often, I find that people are not staying in touch. They're not using email. They're not using text. They're not using social media. They're not picking up the phone and just calling to say, hi, how you doing? Anything I can help you with? What's new? And nurturing a relationship, because people still do buy from people they like and trust. And if you meet with somebody once and they tell you, maybe, but not right now, if you don't stay in touch, then they're probably going to work with whoever else is staying in touch with them, or whoever gets in contact with them at the exact time that they need whatever it is that you're offering. So sales is certainly a game of consistently reaching out, but also staying in touch with people and developing that relationship, and then building on the foundation of relationship to eventually come to the point where they want to do business with you. I can tell you this, for years and years, I was a client at Citibank. They had what's called the entire relationship. They had all my business accounts, all my personal accounts, my credit card, everything was at Citibank. And then they became a customer of mine, coincidentally. I did business with them for a long time. Then they eventually stopped using me and moved on to something else. But at that point, I had applied for a very, very small line of credit. Now, remember, Citibank had my entire relationship. They had lots and lots of my money sitting in their bank. And I applied for a tiny line of credit. And I got back a form letter from them saying that they would be happy to consider a line of credit for me, but they needed 2 years of my tax returns. Well, I actually counted it up, and it was going to be me having to take 72 pages, take the staples out of my tax returns, put them on a scanner, scan 72 pages into a USB drive, and then send them an email with that, or make copies of it and put it through the mail. I did not think that was reasonable for the ridiculously little amount I was asking for. And I also didn't think it was reasonable because they already knew I had plenty of money in the bank to cover that, just in case I didn't pay my line of credit back. At any rate, what I did was I wrote on that form letter, I'm not going to say it out loud, but F you in big bold letters, I'm closing all my accounts, and I sent it back to the person who sent it to me. And then, hang on there, Paul. And then what happened was I went to my branch. I called over the branch manager and said, hey, man, close every account I've got. Close every single account I've got. He was, of course, aghast. It's like, what happened? What's going on? Because we had had a relationship for many years. And I showed him the letter, and I showed him the copy of the FU that I wrote on it. And he said, Jeff, I can fix this, but it was too late. So I'm suggesting that each of you wants to stay in touch with people, take good care of them, and nurture them along, because at some point they may be ready to do business with you. And the point is because Citibank had screwed up, I then went to another bank that had been courting my business for years and years and years. So you want to make sure that you're nurturing people and get ready for that big Q2 and Q3. And now, hopefully, we can both see and hear Paul. Paul, can you hear us? And you want to say hello?
I can.
There we go. Good morning, Paul.
Welcome. Good morning.
To the Sales Network.
What's funny is you and I are chatting ahead of time, and then right at the countdown, you started sounding choppy. Your video was frozen. I'm like, what the heck? And then it went dead. So
technology is always great when it works, my friend. Paul, would you maybe take a couple of minutes and tell us about your background and what brought you up to now, and also explain to us the company you work for, which is True Green?
Sure, I can do that. So I've been sales leadership positions for the past since the late 90s. I'm old a little bit. And so I've worked for different types of organizations, different industries, and so forth, from $2 million dollar companies to $22 billion companies, and others in between. Today I'm the strategic and national accounts director for True Green Commercial. So if you haven't heard of True Green, we're the grass care company, more or less. Started in 1973, been doing it for a long time. Mostly, a lot of people see our trucks driving around residential and so forth. I work in the commercial division only for True Green, whereas I'm more or less calling the Fortune 1000 companies, how to keep their exterior and their grass and their curb appeal, first impressions, top notch. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Got it. And you've been in sales a long time, like I have. Is there one secret to sales success? And if so, what is it? And if not, it's okay if there's not one secret. I mean, there's probably many, but what would you say is the biggest secret to sales success?
Yeah, there's not one. I would say it's a compilation of so many things. So I'd say number one, you gotta be hungry. You gotta be ongoing learner. I gotta be driven. I gotta be competitive. I gotta do what others aren't willing to do. And so forth. I'd say learnings that probably, if you have those innate abilities, I'm smart, I'm driven, I'm competitive. Now, a lot of people are smart, driven, and competitive. Great. What are you going to do that they're not doing to make yourself better? And I would say I would equate that to being a lifelong learner. Okay. Once I finish college, I'm not done learning. And frankly, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I think I'm using or remember very little from what I learned in college.
I don't use geometry very often.
Or algebra, all that stuff. I would say just be phenomenal at the fundamentals. Do all the little things that your competition is doing. Because what I got to do as a salesperson is, whoever I'm calling on, they got choices. So how do I set myself apart? Number one, as a company, as an individual, and so forth. But behind the scenes, start your day off right, and so forth, just learn, read books, listen to you, and many other things. Get a mentor, accountability partner, and so forth. Lots of things go into it. It's not just one thing.
Got it. And you just said one of the things is start your day off right. Do you have a ritual that you do in the morning every day, or how do you start your day off right?
I'm an early riser. I'm up at usually 5 or 6. My wife, she sleeps a lot more than I do, so I get a lot of alone time. I just you have to get your head pointed in the right direction, I think, every day. I spend some time with my faith, doing some reading there, and so forth. And I try to every day as well too. I read books, and so forth. So try to, get my mind right, spiritually, and also, try to learn at least one or two things, for each day. I like to, I stole this from somebody, maybe it's Brian Tracy, but, try to do a checkup from the neck up every day. Because, whether you think you can or think you can't, we've all heard it. You're right. So you're going to make it a great day, or you're going to wing it and hope for the best.
Yeah. It was either Brian Tracy or Zig Ziglar, one of those guys. Just check up from the neck up. I personally believe that starting your day off right is essential to success in sales. I have a routine that I do every day where I start out talking to myself while I'm WALKing the DOG, and I had to spell that because he's laying behind me. And if I said it, he would have jumped up and thought it was time for that. But as I'm doing that through the neighborhood, I'm speaking to myself out loud. And I'm saying very positive things to myself, like today's going to be a great day. I'm going to help lots of people today. And it actually goes on for 10 minutes because I believe you actually create your day. Can I have a day that still goes wrong? Of course, I'm a human and sometimes it does. Right. But I tell you something, by setting my day up for success mentally, I believe that helps me to do it in the real world. And if, like so many people I've worked with, you wake up and it's like, oh, Jesus Christmas, I can't believe I got to go spend another day at this horrible job. Yeah. You're pretty much dooming yourself. So I'm with you. It's all how you started out. And one of our listeners, Jason Collins, says, quite frankly, the lack of respect being shown for the Pythagorean theorem right now is appalling. Sorry, Jason, I apologize. But algebra, geometry, none of that's helping me. My daughter is an aerospace engineer. She eats and lives that stuff, but not me.
You know that yesterday was Pi Day, right?
I do, absolutely. And
it was Pi.
And how many digits can you say past 3.14?
None. But I remember Pi 3.14. One thing that's kind of related to this, and about doing a checkout from the neck up, and so forth. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Tom Hopkins. And more or less this is from the 80s, early 90s probably. He goes, every morning in the shower, I have a sign that says, I'm awake, I'm alive, and I feel great. I'm awake, I'm alive. And I think that was Tom Hopkins kind of, getting himself psyched up for the day to go attack the day. Was it Hopkins, you think?
It could have been. That was the very first training I took 47 years ago. Tommy Hopkins, Champions International, his famous book, How to Master the Art of Selling. There's a lot of stuff if you read it today where you go, come on, that was so 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But there's still a lot of very basic good information in there. And as when I was a sales manager and national sales director, I used to buy that book in bulk, and I used to make everybody who went to work for me read that book because Tommy was one of the greats, absolutely. And I think he's still going. He's got to be 100 years old. But
oh my gosh, is he really? I know Brian Tracy's still kicking it, I think.
Yeah, I think Tommy Hopkins is still around. Why do you think you personally have had success in both sales and sales leadership? What was it about you?
I think it's kind of much what I already said. I'm a very driven, person. I am. I think I'm pretty smart, but it's like the things doing, what other people don't do. I am ultra competitive. I don't know how you feel about importance of being competitive in sales, but I hate to lose. I just don't like losing. Personally, professionally. I think I got 2 kids. They're grown now, but I'm pretty sure I stopped letting them win Candyland when they're 5. I'm like, that's enough. We've played this a few hundred times. Daddy's not going to let you win anymore. I got some funny stories about being competitive in my personal life. Always not so great personally. But in a professional standpoint, I think being competitive is good because, excuse my language, but second place sucks. And that's the first loser. Is that I'm just a very driven, I'm an ongoing, learner. I never think I've learned it all and I'm done. There's always a way to get better. I can learn from people like you. I just cracked a new book this morning, and so forth. Some things too is like, well, I read that before. I'm like, oh, all right, great. How much of that do you remember? How much that are you applying, day to day? You have to get back to the basics, sometimes. And some things, oh crap, that's a great idea. I forgot to do that, So I'd say those are some of the keys,
And in my coaching practice, that's all I do is I bring people back to the fundamentals. It's here are the basics of selling because there are some foundational concepts that work no matter what you're doing. And when you try to get too fancy, you give yourself a hard time. And I have to tell you that I love the piece about being competitive. It's why when I help companies hire, I love hiring college athletes because they hate losing and they love winning, and they're usually team players. They're not always the most brilliant. I like to say they're not always the sharpest knife in the drawer, but it doesn't matter because you don't need to be a genius to be successful in sales. I always say you only need half a brain, but that competitive spirit that makes you. Well, look, you don't have to. If you got half a brain, but you have some other things like that competitive spirit, like that desire to win and earn a lot, like you're honest. There are some traits that make you naturally more likely to be successful in sales.
Right.
And it doesn't mean if you don't have them that you're not going to be successful, but it makes it easier, and certainly competitive is one of them. In your career, is there either a person or maybe a job that most impacted you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this was back in the late 90s. I just sold off a company I had owned, and I was looking for, a good fit. That's number one for me. I got to love what I do, and the pay is important, of course. I was looking for a good fit. And there's this company in the Twin Cities. I'm in Minnesota. Yeah, but so I'm in the Twin Cities, and there's a company that's been around for years. It's called Peak Performance Network, and they brought in these speakers to the big convention centers once a month, and the reps for that company would sell tickets. So the owner, his name is Dan, and he goes, "All right, what if I put all of these best speakers and gurus, all of them, the best sales trainers in the world, onto a library?" Back then I think we called them video CDs, but it's the equivalent to DVDs, more or less. So what he did, he got the rights to all of their best training programs, and he put them in a big 3-ring binder of all of these discs. And he made me watch them. Back in the day, I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I got to watch this much? Holy smokes." So I was watching the Brian Tracy's, and the Zig Ziglars and all that stuff back in the late, there's most of the stuff in the library is probably from the 90s, a couple classics from the 80s, I think were in there. But so he made me watch them relentlessly. And I was not happy with them, but he'd quiz me. "Hey, what'd you learn this one?" I'm like, so God, he's holding me accountable to this. So I got to watch these darn things, but that changed my life, quite frankly. And the reason why he wanted me to do is, number one, to make me better at what I did. Okay. So I could learn from Brian Tracy and all of those guys out there. But also when I was at a client, and they said, so I was selling this B2B, and so forth, selling this access to this library, and so forth. If I happen to be in a meeting and somebody says, my sales team, they always get stuck on the money question, or they always say, "I want to think about it." And they go, "Okay, you think about it and call me next week." So if that was the case, I could pull out disc number 142, Brian Tracy, "I want to think about it." So I solved their pain on the spot. And I said, imagine, if you had access to all of this library and so forth. So, I'd say this company's called Total Training Network, and Dan Bratler was the owner. Changed my life.
Yeah. Changed my life. I don't know if you see me smiling, but I'm smiling because I'm so old that when I heard you say, it was on CDs, when I first started out, my boss made me listen to record albums with Earl Nightingale. There were no CDs, there were no VHS tapes. It was literally record albums, 33 1/3 record albums, Earl Nightingale and people like that. And he said, "This is how you're going to learn how to sell." And boy, oh boy, I sat there like you going, "Okay, all right, I'll listen." Because, my thing was, I always felt, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to listen to what the experts say. It was the same thing when I started my first real sales job, which was Encyclopedia Britannica. They had VHS tapes, and the training took 2 weeks. And I sat in a room all day for 2 weeks, day after day. And the manager would come in, put in a VHS tape. It would last an hour. I'd watch it. He'd come in and say, "What'd you get out of that?" Boom, put in the next one for 2 weeks. But you know what? It wasn't great sales training, but it was great training for how to sell Encyclopedia Britannica. And I mean exactly what they told me to do. Exactly. Because in my mind, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm too stupid. I'm just going to do what they told me. And I immediately became very successful at selling Encyclopedia Britannica because I listened to what people who knew what they were doing told me to do. Quite often we make it too difficult. People are trying to reinvent the wheel, and it's just not necessary.
And I think that's true. So if you want to be successful, find somebody who's already done it and do what they did.
100%.
But this boss, Dan, he locked me in a room for my training for like a week. All right. So, and he made me memorize a 20-page script. Okay. Of our presentation, and so forth. A lot more telling back then than so. But he made word for word, and he would come in every couple hours and check on me, and so forth. And it was tonality, it was pausing in the right place and doing all of that. So that it was canned. And at first, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, so I just did what he told me, And when I first got out in the field, I think I sounded canned. I sounded like a robot, and so forth. But in about 2 weeks, I made it my own. The concepts were still there. A lot of the words were still there, but then I changed some words that were more of me, and it sounded natural. Nobody had any idea. At one point in time, I actually memorized something, So, but that was kind of old school. But I still think we need to plan out some stuff, for sure. If somebody says, I want to think about it, you shouldn't go, well, I've never heard that before. You better know exactly how to respond,
100%. And Paul, you've done a lot of hiring over your years, hiring other salespeople. When you hire salespeople, do you look for experience in that particular industry, or is that important? Or is that not important? What do you look for besides some of the things we already said? And is industry experience important?
Overall, I'd say absolutely not. But what you see today, like job descriptions and so forth, I mean, they are looking for the perfect unicorn, that has, all this 10 years of experience. I'm like, really? You need 10 years in your industry, So I don't look for industry experience. The perfect unicorn to me is, okay, like the company now is like, they're agronomists. They understand turf care and all of that stuff. They have a PhD. They've done it before for another company. And they are just an amazing salesperson. If they have both of those things, that's my unicorn. And oftentimes when companies hire, that's what the job description says, and I think that's lazy. Okay. And I'll just ask people, hiring people, I'm like, so yourself and everybody at your company, was there a point in time that you didn't know anything about this industry? The answer is yes. At one point in time, everybody there didn't know your industry, but you're pretty smart people and they learned it, correct? So I'd say industry experience, yes, that's important. So I can be seen as a trusted advisor, right? I got to know my industry, but I can learn it. And you can agree or disagree with me. I would say 90+% of sales success can be translated among really any industries.
I would not disagree with you at all, my friend. I agree completely. When I hire, I prefer industry experience. It makes my life easier as a trainer or as a coach or as a manager, but it's not necessary. Look, I've sold a lot of different things. I've managed people in a lot of different areas, and I've trained people in a wide. I mean, it's kind of hard at this point to find a type of organization I haven't done training for, even though I may know nothing or very, very little about that industry, because sales is sales. The basics are the basics. And you'll laugh because I was trying to think of a name before when we were thinking of old training tapes and CDs. Yeah. And John Hill said J. Douglas Edwards. And that was actually a name I was trying to remember. He believed in a canned sales presentation along with Earl Nightingale, J. Douglas Edwards. I absolutely listened to his record albums too.
Real quick about industry experience, a question I would ask, the hiring manager or HR, and so forth, is this question. Okay. We described the perfect unicorn. They're an A industry experience. They're an A sales rep. Okay. Probably not going to find them. But if you had a choice between a salesperson that's an A salesperson, doesn't know your industry, let's say he's a C at this point, would you rather hire that person or somebody's not your equal in sales? Maybe they're a B, pretty good, but they have the industry experience. Who in the long run is going to give you a better return on your investment? Short term, probably the industry guy. Long term, and I'm hiring for long term, is the person with a superior drive, superior sales skills, and so forth, who's smart and will learn your industry. The ramp up is a little longer, but be patient. Okay, you're not hiring for somebody for 6 months. You're hiring for years, and the person that'll deliver the higher ROI is the superior salesperson. Period.
Gotcha. I looked at some of your posts, and recently you posted, have you ever wondered why some salespeople struggle and others seem to effortlessly close deals? You said the secret lies in relationship selling. Talk to me a little bit about relationship selling.
Well, I always try to put myself in the shoes of the buyer, right? So I don't like to be sold. Don't sell me. I mean, I get phone calls. People stop at my door and they're just information dumping. They have no idea what I like, what I want, what I need, who I am, what are my goals, and so forth. I mean, relationship selling is really, it's deep discovery, really into learning kind of who they are, providing value, and so forth. And like I said, put yourself in their shoes, because buyers want to be, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be understood, and so forth. Like I said, the average rep just dumps on them, and so forth. It's about relationships. Would you buy from you? So I mean, it's not a popularity contest, but you got to have that relationship, and you want to be seen as a partner versus a vendor. Okay. And initially, when you make a call on somebody, you're just another freaking vendor. So how do I separate myself so somebody seen as more of a partner that's truly looking to help the certain buyer achieve their goals, solve some problems, fix their pain, and people can feel that, that they can feel if you're genuine, about really helping them. And I'm not, so I don't have commission breath when I'm speaking to them, if that makes sense.
It does, of course, and I completely agree. And I take it one step above partner. I like that term. I want to be a trusted advisor. I want to be the person who you call for advice, even if it's not about sales or sales training, because you trust that I know what I'm talking about. And, oh, Jeff, I need a good accountant. Do you know somebody? And I do get calls like that. I have an extensive network of people that I highly trust. I have sales recruiters that I can recommend to people and all kinds of other people. And I want to be that trusted advisor. And that comes from certainly knowing what you're talking about and serving your prospect or your client, but it is about the relationship. I could not agree more. And I've had this argument a bunch of times with people, especially recently. Somebody recently posted that relationship selling is dead. I could not disagree more. Look, lots of things have been changing over the last 5 or 10 years. AI in the last year is changing the landscape, but I've been selling for almost 50 years. And the one thing that has not changed is that unless you have what somebody's got, and they can't get it anywhere else, which is usually not the case.
Right.
Unless they can't get it anywhere else, people still do business with people that they like and trust. And of the two, the trust is more important. That's a relationship.
Right.
The person who I was arguing with about, relationship selling is dead, she goes, it's about helping people change their thoughts and what they believe. I'm like, well, how are you going to do that if they don't trust you? How's that ever going to happen? It just doesn't.
Nailed it. Yep.
As you know, I do a number of things, and one of them is sales training. What are your thoughts about training in general? Some companies do very little, some companies do none, and others are constantly training their people. I worked with one company that brought me in. They had a training meeting every morning, 5 days a week, 7 a.m. Everybody on the team had to be there at 7 a.m., 7 to 7:30, training every single day. So do you think continuous sales training is important? Should it be an occasional event, a one-time thing? Tell me a little bit about that.
Somewhere between never and every single day at 7. So I'm not opposed to every day at 7. That's at 7 a.m. So the only thing I would say about that is I love that, but make sure people have personal lives too, as well. So no, it's continuous training and so forth. Because like I said before, if I read a book, went to a seminar a couple of years ago, what do I remember for it? Number one, and number two, how much of that am I applying? It's not a one-time event by any means. And in my past sales training, I've used the analogy of, all right, so let's say you're overweight and you want to get in shape. Okay. Well known. Obviously, I got to change my dietary habits and so forth. But working out, I got to go to the gym. Can I go to the gym once or twice a year and be in physical shape? Obvious answer is absolutely not. Everybody knows that. Nobody disagree with that. The brain's a big muscle. Okay, it needs a workout. Just like your body needs a workout to get in shape, you need to work out your brain in a continuous fashion to be in mental shape. I've actually told this story, so just I digress a little bit. And during some of my sales training, this is a quick, I call it my lumberjack story. So just picture an old lumberjack. You can picture him with a flannel shirt. He's like, in his 60s and so forth. And the brand new lumberjack, comes on board. He's like 6'5", 240. He's buff. At the end of the day, the first day, the old guy outproduced him by a large margin. Second day, same thing. Third day, this kept going on. I mean, the young guy strapping buck. I mean, he was skipping lunches, I mean, he was just, doing, just working harder. And finally, after a week, I mean, he's like, geez, my gosh, he goes, this guy's got a secret. He's got a secret. I wonder what he's doing. He's not working as hard as me. I'll tell you that. Lumberjack goes, you're right. You're bigger, you're stronger, you're younger, and so forth. I did notice that I do one thing every day that you don't. He goes, what's that? Tell me. He goes, I sharpen my axe. I'm like, oh, so that's kind of the same thing. I want to sharpen my axe. I want to stay sharp, and that comes from being diligent, about training my brain.
Yeah, we have to. I agree. Every day is a little bit much. And this was a client of mine, a particular organization. They were very demanding, very tough managers, kind of old school. But the typical salesperson does not invest in themselves at all. They don't read a book. They don't go to a seminar. They don't do anything unless their company forces them to do it.
Right.
I believe that one of the reasons I'm successful in sales and have been my entire career, except for one job, which I just wasn't good at, is not that I'm a genius. It's not that I was born to be the best salesperson in the world, but I have treated it as a career. I do read books. I do go to seminars. I still do, even after almost 50 years. These are all books that I've read, and there's a couple more bookcases filled with them. And I'm constantly trying to learn. I'm following people on LinkedIn who I respect, because there's always something else that you could be learning. I agree with you. I've heard that story many times. It's sharpen your axe. You got to sharpen your axe. And if you don't, you're doomed. You're going to get outplayed and outrun by somebody who's actually taking the time to get better at what they do.
And here's the deal. This is not a practice life. We get one shot at it, if I'm just going to keep going down the path, always what I've been doing, you're going to keep getting the results you've always been getting. So what can I do different? What can I do different from others that are not doing it? So, how can I win? What I want my legacy to be. Yeah, he slumped around in sales for a few years, and at my eulogy, yeah, he's all right. So in the middle of the born date and the death that you pass is a dash. So how do you spend that very, very, very important dash? What do you want your legacy to be? Yeah, he was a slacker, or this guy was freaking driven. He was always looking to help people. So talk about the checkout from the neck up as well too. That kind of talks about that.
100%. Paul, we're a little more than halfway through. For those who are just tuning in, we're talking to Paul Yahnke, the Strategic National Sales Director at True Green, and we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor in 60 seconds, which is me. Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg, the founder of the Sales Pro Network. For nearly 5 decades, I've been selling, managing, coaching, and training salespeople internationally. And I'm often asked for one-on-one or private coaching, but it does involve a substantial investment. For that reason, I've recently developed the Sales Pro Insider Network community. It works like this. We get together twice a month on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. At the first session of the month, it's you and me, with me taking your questions and giving you the advice and help you need to both prospect and sell more effectively. At the second session of the month, we'll have a guest coach speaking on a fascinating topic that helps sellers like you and me. And of course, we'll do group coaching then too. The best part is the investment is just $27 for the first month, and there's no long-term contract at all. In fact, you can cancel at any time. Go to crushsalesgoals.com. That's crushsalesgoals.com. I hope to see you there. All right, so I've got even better news. While it's $27 a month for the first month, if anybody DMs me, says you saw Paul Yahnke on this broadcast, I will send you a link to get you in for free for this month. Our next meeting is the 26th, and we have a great guest coach coming in, Nikki Gangemi, who's an NLP expert. It actually relates to something you said earlier, Paul. She's going to be talking about how to have better conversations and increase your sales using NLP. Tony Robbins was an NLP practitioner before he became this great motivational guru. And one of the things he said, just like you did, is if somebody else is being successful and you do the same things, you're going to be successful too. So I hope everybody's going to come and check out Coach Nikki on the 26th. And again, if you DM me or you email me or reach out to me via our Facebook group, the Sales Pro Network, I'll be happy to send you a link instead of Crush Sales Goals, because that's one's going to be $27. I'll send you a link to come in for free this time. Paul, I have conversations with sales leaders regularly about this, and there seems to be 2 schools of thought. Organizations often have what's called a leaderboard. Could you explain to people what is a leaderboard, and do you believe in having a board that's visible to everybody?
Absolutely. So a leaderboard, let's say I have 8 salespeople, whatever it may be. This can be a digital leaderboard. I mean, it can be old school on a dry erase board, whatever it has. But a leaderboard shows, okay, for the month or for the quarter, hey, here's how the 1 through 8 did. As far as revenue, different targets we have for them. If I'm number 1 on that leaderboard, I want to stay there. The spot of number 1's always open. Okay. Now, if I'm not number 1, say I'm 2 through 8. Hopefully I'm driven. I can't stand not being first because I'm competitive. Okay. If it doesn't bother you, if you're hunky dory being number 7 or 8, it's probably not the right person. I don't have the right person in the right seat because they don't care about their last. They're probably not going to be around a long time.
Gotcha. I'm able to argue both sides. I also do believe in a leaderboard. The only time I don't think it's a good thing is when you've got one person who's consistently number 1 and nobody else ever gets there.
Yeah.
It actually becomes a demotivator for many people. Now, guys like you and me, when we see somebody else's number 1, I think I'm speaking for both of us.
Yeah.
It just makes us work harder because we want to take that away. But, if you are a person who's consistently coming in last, it actually becomes a demotivator. And that's where a great sales manager comes in, or a great sales coach, because they want to help that person move up the ranks. And it should be an inspiration. There's no doubt about that.
And generally speaking, if there's a guy that's been around for 20 years, he's phenomenal. He's always number 1. Like, geez, and I've been here 6 months. We're not apples to apples. So is that leaderboard fair? Probably not. So I hear what you're saying for sure. Yeah.
What if it's a gal instead of a guy?
Yeah. No, all the better.
Absolutely. We don't want to leave out the ladies. I've met some incredible salespeople of both sexes. Well, let's say of all the genders there are, because I'm a little confused these days, but I've met incredible salespeople of both sexes. And I actually worked with a company in London one time. Their strategy was they only hired attractive women because they were selling memberships in a networking group for CTOs, chief technology officers,
right?
CIOs, CTOs, and the chief nerd in any organization. I walked into the training room today and I'm like, is this like a group of models? I mean, I didn't say that, but that was their strategy, and they were great salespeople. I mean, just interesting.
It's real quick, funny you mentioned that. I mean, actually, my mentor. My true mentor is a woman, Danita Bai. She was she has sales growth specialist. And to this day, I've known her for almost actually 20 years, and she is my mentor. I have several, but I'd say she's my number 1 mentor is a gal, and she's amazing.
Fantastic. One of the things I find about salespeople is, of course, you said it before, we're looking to make as much money as possible. And because I do not believe sales is a 9-to-5 job, if you want to be successful in sales and you just want to work 9 to 5, probably not going to do it. But sometimes salespeople work so much that they get burnt out. So any suggestions on how do you balance work life and personal life? And what suggestions do you have for when a salesperson does get burnt out?
Yeah, I think number 1, in life, you got to be purposeful about it. What with my time, because time is finite, so it's not a practice life, as I said before, but you got to get a handle on that. Have I worked 90 hours a week, 80 hours a week? Yeah, I've done it, and I burnt out, and I'm like, geez, I just can't do this. So I think I have your priorities, in place. For me, okay, it's faith, it's family, and work. Okay, if number 1 and 2 get screwed up, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do well. So I got to be very purposeful about time in my life for taking my wife on a date, and making time, okay, for some things that just drive me. I live on a lake. I love boating. I'm playing pickleball. So I have other things in my life besides just work. Because if I'm not careful, I am working all weekend, and I'm working, 10, 12 hours every single day, and you're going to get burnt out. You have to realize that. It's not a 9-to-5 job, but it's not a 7 a.m. to midnight job either, 7 days a week. I gotta make the time for me, because if I don't, my health is probably going to start failing, and so forth. but yeah, you have personal conversations, with your sales rep. You get to know them, on a kind of personal, level as well too. Like what are their personal goals? Well, I want to buy a boat. What do you like doing? And so forth. So talk about them. How's it going with XYZ you talked to me about last week. And so they're, oh geez, well, it's going great. My wife is happy. And so forth. So I think as a sales leader, you got to get to know your team, because what works for one person is not going to work for another. What drives them? What gets them out of bed? I think a good sales leader will tap into that, because they don't wake up every day just to serve me. They have their own goals. What are those?
Yeah. There are certainly times when a salesperson does need to crush it and work those long hours for days,
sure.
Sometimes weeks, and sometimes even months at a time, but you will get burnt out. And the mind and the body need a break. We need to recreate. That's why it's called recreation. You need a vacation. Yep. You do need to take some time off. You should build little breaks into your day, because I've read a lot of books on the subject, and almost every study shows that the people who try to crush it all day long, every hour, they burn out quickly. But the people who build little breaks into their day all day long, every 90 to 120 minutes, I'm not talking about a 2-hour break every 90 to 120 minutes.
Sure.
That little break, you come back stronger and more refreshed. I know that, working from home as I do, there have been afternoons where it's like, you know what, I'm going to go take a nap for half an hour, but then I can come back, and work from 2 to 8 p.m. if I need to, because otherwise I would have been crashing by 3 or 4. So you need that little break, I think.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the terms we hear all the time is unique value proposition in sales. Would you describe for people who may not know, what is a unique value proposition and why is that important?
So some people call it a unique selling proposition, unique value proposition, and so forth. So, so we need to know very specifically, because your buyers out there, they have choices. I don't think there's ever a case where I'm the one and only spot on earth this person can get what I offer. Okay. So they have lots of choices out there, and perhaps, a lot of people are, calling on them. Okay. So unique value proposition. So what does my company do uniquely that's different / better than other people who may be calling in them with a similar or same product or service? How am I uniquely different? So I think we need to define that, as a company. Okay. So here's all their choices, over here. How my hands losing. How can I be seen separately? Over here, I always say, if they're looking down at all of the choices they have out there, I have to be seen separately from the group of other choices. Now, if I can't do that, you need to figure out a way to go, okay, well, I don't know if I'm unique. It's a pencil, okay, well, all right, it's a pencil. What is unique about your company? And is it service? How can I set myself apart? Because if I can't do that, when I'm representing my company, it's going to come down a lot of times to price, and none of us want to sell on price. Okay. And I don't think I've ever worked for the low price leader in any industry I've been in. It's usually the most expensive out there, and that's fine. And I've made a ton of sales because I've done I think a good job setting my company apart, and the problems we solve, and the pain that we make go away, as well as myself. Set myself apart. Personally, they can tell that this guy's real. He does care. He doesn't have commission breath. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know who the competitors are in your industry, but can you give us an example? What's the unique value proposition for TruGreen?
Yeah, there's several things, right? So let's say I call in a company, they got 500 locations spread across the country. Now, those 500 locations, maybe they have 500 different landscapers or outdoor handyman and so forth. Or maybe that a landscaper can cover 10 of their locations. The biggest pain point we have is currently our clients or targets, they're getting mixed results because they're using so many different companies across the country. And some of these outdoor handyman or landscapers, they're good at agronomy. It's very rare though. they're very good at mowing. They're good at snow plowing, spring and fall cleanup. And because it's part of the RFP, oh, I guess I have to do this fertilizing and weed killing. I'll buy a bag at Home Depot, and I hope that works. So we on staff, we have on-staff PhDs, agronomists, we understand pH levels, all these different things, the science that is required for amazing turf care. And we're the one and only company. We're Coke and we don't have a Pepsi. We're the one and only who can service locations across the country from coast to coast, giving our clients the consistent results, pricing, and service that they need.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And there's another acronym, ICP, which stands for Ideal Client Profile. Can you talk a little bit about that? And first of all, do you believe in those? And is it necessary? And can you tell people what those are?
Yeah. Well, first, as a company, we can't be everything to everybody. A lot of companies try to be everything to everybody. So I want to look at, say, my current client base. Let's analyze all my current clients. What are the common denominators? What do they all have in common? They're this size of company. They have these SIC codes, whatever it may be. Okay, so my current clients, it's like what do they have in common, and how do we solve those problems? Like, okay, you know what, I think what we saw these 4 industries or these 4 SIC codes, like that's the best fit, for our company and what we do. So I would say identify those types of companies where you have the best chance, of winning the business. Because we can already see it. I mean, the last few years, we have all kinds of these clients. Well, where's the rest of them? Maybe we should target those. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I actually take it one step further. Not only who are we the best for, it's also who's the best for us. I'm not a big fan of putting square pegs in round holes. And look, clearly I'm at a different stage of my career and success than somebody brand new who's just starting out in sales. So I can be a little bit more picky, but I have a very strict set of criteria for who I'll work with. There are people who have approached me for coaching or training, and I'm like, sorry, I'm not right for you. I'm saying the words politely, but in my head, I'm like, I don't want to work with this person. I don't want to work with this team. I don't want to work in this industry. I don't want to work with this company, whatever the reason is, because one of the things that allows me to do that is because I do prospect consistently and I'm constantly attracting people so that I can pick and choose. If you're not, then you kind of have to take whatever comes along. But I don't want to work with anybody who's not going to be fun. I don't want to work with anybody who's going to argue with me. When you hire me, you're hiring me for my expertise. Don't argue with me about it. So you're going to pay me according to my terms. You're going to pay me exactly what I asked for. All that and way more is part of my ideal client profile, not just who am I right for, but who's right for me. Because when you've got both of those, now you've got a great match. You've got hopefully a long-term relationship, which I know you want in your industry too. And that makes your life a lot easier. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. And it's okay to walk away from somebody.
Not only is it okay to walk away, I will not only turn away business, I will fire a client. Now, I don't say that to do that capriciously, and I don't say I do it all the time, but more than once I've said to somebody, this isn't working out for whatever reason. I'll take responsibility. Let me introduce you to somebody else who might be able to serve you better. I'll always leave them with the best. It's not, hey, you effing a-hole, I'm not going to work with you. Because, you never know who you're going to run into, but I don't want to work with anybody if it's not. It's like being married. If it's a deep relationship, and I'm not going to stay with a relationship that's not working. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes I deal with highly experienced salespeople, and sometimes I deal with brand new. I have one client whose entire hiring strategy is they hire people right out of college. They don't hire experienced salespeople. Now, I can argue both sides. When you hire experienced salespeople, they're going to hit the ground running faster, but they're more expensive and they're harder to manage. But a brand new salesperson who has never sold before, they don't have any bad habits. What advice do you have for a brand new or fairly new salespeople?
I mean, some of which that we've already kind of hit on, a little bit. Number one, hire the right person with the drive, the mentality, the intelligence, competitiveness, all of that. Okay. But they don't have any experience in sales. They don't have any experience by industry. For a new person, find a mentor, somebody who's already figured it out. I mean, just find a mentor. Who's the best salesperson at the company I just got hired at? And follow them, shadow them, do what they're doing. Hopefully your sales manager. So, I mean, and you get to know, all the best salespeople, maybe there's one. And that way you can kind of pick and choose, oh, I like what Bob's doing over here. I like what Susan's, doing here, and so forth. Now I'm going to make it my own and shape my own sales career. But study, learn, just be hungry to learn from the best. I would say that's the biggest thing.
I think that's brilliant. And in any sales job, a lot of my career was managing salespeople, but in any sales job where I was a seller, when I came to a new company, first thing I did was I looked for who was the top salesperson and I asked them out to lunch. Let me buy you lunch. Could I pick your brain for a little bit? Because you said it before. If somebody else is doing it successfully and you do the same things, guess what? You're going to be successful too. And I always wanted to, how do I get where I want to go as quickly as I can? I know there are no shortcuts, but that is kind of a shortcut. Learn from the best. Brilliant. And by the way, I hope I pronounced the last name right, but Christy Valbel says very informative, Paul. So you've got a fan.
All right.
Sometimes in sales, and I can certainly share many of these, we run into interesting situations. Do you have any funny or maybe embarrassing sales stories?
Yeah, I do. I think there's several times I walked out of the meeting. I'm like, gosh darn it, my fly was open. But but I have one. This is back when I was working for Total Training Network. I happened to move to Atlanta for a couple of years, and I was about ready to land the biggest sale in the company's history. It was a wireless company back in the day. It was called Singular Wireless.
Sure, I remember.
Yeah, so Singular Wireless. Yeah, so they got gobbled up by AT&T or whoever, but they're big in the Southeast, and I think the appointment was noon or 1 or somewhere like that. Downtown Atlanta. Posh boardroom. So I'd done everything correctly. I talked to decision makers. So I was meeting with the board. And I knew out of the 10 people in the room, I had relationships with the 2 or 3 that I've been talking to up this time. It was going to be like a rubber stamp deal, because I asked ahead of time, what's the decision making process? Yeah, these have to make sure that we're on board. They agree with kind of what we saw and so forth. And the room was like crickets like the whole time. When I talk to people, I mean, it's very interactive. It's a conversation. When I'm in a sales situation, we're just having a conversation. And I was going through my presentation. I walked out of that meeting. It was just like uncomfortable silence. And I get down to my car and I look in my rearview mirror. So I had went out and I had salad for lunch right before. You already know. I had a piece of salad perfectly placed on one of my front 2 teeth here. And it was perfectly on top of that one tooth. So it looked like I was just missing a tooth. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I didn't get the deal. I think a piece of salad cost me.
All right. Well, sorry, I'm giggling. That's funny.
I know.
A couple of weeks ago, you posted something and it said, no matter how you feel, get up, dress up, show up, and never give up. How do you do that on days when you're just not feeling it? Because we all have those days sometimes.
Yeah, we do. It's it goes back to just the mentality, behind everything. And there's some days maybe, geez, I got 3 hours of sleep for whatever reason. I couldn't sleep last night, or I got this looming day ahead of me. And I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. All right, spend some alone time, get your head on right. Doing the things that we'd already talked about. Adjust your attitude. There's some days I'm a human. Sometimes I have a better attitude than others. Fact, and I think it's just the awareness, of that, and the awareness that, all right, if I don't friggin' shape up here, Paul, I'm not gonna be able to serve anybody well today. All right, so let's get it right. Whether it's inspirational, or whether it's a sales book, maybe it's talking to my wife and like, hey, slap me upside the head, because I'm not feeling good today. And maybe I'm talking to my mentor, it's like, hey, the little pep talk, little things. But my day is not going to be great unless I shape up, get up, show up, and so forth, because I want to serve my clients well, and I can't do that if this isn't right.
Yeah, you've got to get rid of the head trash. In fact, I was at my networking group. Now, it's not mine. It's a networking group I belong to for 18 years and get about 30% of my business from that group. And yesterday we had our meeting and we were in a breakout room. I was with a couple of other guys who I know, and I was asking both of them, house business, what's going on? And one of them is in the mortgage business, and he was kind of whining. The interest rate is so high, and I can't make any money, and blah blah blah. And this was, I can't resist in any conversation. The sales coach always comes out in me, and I said, the interest rates are high. That sucks. But instead, my question was, Dom, his name's Dominic. I said, Dom, do you know anybody at all in your industry who's crushing it right now? And he goes, yeah, I know a couple of guys. I said, good. So then you can too. Stop the whining. Interest rates are high. Too bad. You don't have the good leads. Too bad. You're in the wrong territory. Too bad. My thing is always this, Paul. It doesn't matter how great your excuses are. If you don't pay the mortgage at the end of the month, they're going to come repossess your house. So you have got to make it happen. And if somebody else is doing it, you can either whine about it or you can do it too. You had something to add to that?
I do. And actually, I learned this from Danita Bai, my mentor. And she said, regarding excuses, right? She would say, Paul, if you couldn't use that excuse, tell me how you solve the problem. Like, oh, okay. If you can't use that excuse, how are you going to solve that problem? So our competition, they're making excuses. So what are going to be differently? And I've had over the years in my office a sign, the big circle with excuse written on it, the big red slash through it. No excuses. I don't like people who make excuses. Take accountability. Okay. What is it that I can do to change this situation? No excuses. Excuses just drive me nuts.
Paul, my auto signature on my email actually has a quote from a famous sales coach, me, and it says, salespeople either have excuses or closed business, period. Which one do you choose? Because it is a choice every single day. You got to wake up and make the choice that no matter what happens, I'm going to do my job today. I'm going to go prospect my rear end off. I'm going to serve a lot of people, and I'm going to help people get involved with my product or service. If you don't, you're kind of doomed. And Paul, it looks like we're out of time. So before we go, I'm going to share my screen. Tell people how to reach you in case they're interested in speaking with you or possibly need True Green services.
Sure. Regarding True Green, or if you just want to just, connect with me on LinkedIn. I didn't put my LinkedIn information on here, but I think I'm one of 3 Paul Yahnke's in the country on LinkedIn. So if you search my name, Paul Yahnke, you'll find me there. So I always like just helping people. I have so many people that I just, have nothing to do with my business and they just want to talk sales. So I'm happy to do that with anybody. And of course, if you want to contact me about True Green services, you've got a large company, hundreds of properties, and so forth. We truly make a difference, and we help people out, solve their problems. Curb appeal mostly, first impressions.
And Paul, because we are on a live broadcast where people can see us right now, and they could have seen the information I was just sharing, that's great, but this will be converted to a podcast in about a week or so. Would you like to give out your phone number and maybe spell your last name for people who are looking for you on LinkedIn?
Correct. So my phone number is 612-297-1348. And my name is Paul, just like it sounds, Paul. Then the last name is Yahnke. So it's Y as in yellow, A-H as in Henry, N as in Nancy, K-E.
It was the H that I was looking for. I don't know that everybody would catch that without you actually saying it. And before we go, there's one thing you just did, which I think was perfect. And I'd like you to explain why you did it. When you gave your phone number, you gave it very slowly. Why did you do that?
So people can write it down.
Exactly. And when I teach people how to cold call, Paul, I do the same thing. It's like if you're leaving a voicemail and you leave your number, my number is 516-314-9037. I know my own number and I can't write it down that fast. So how could I possibly expect a prospect who's listening to my voicemail do it that fast? And if you think they're going to play the voicemail over 16 times so they get to write it down, they're not. They're going to say, if this guy wants me so bad, he will call me back. And with that, we are out of time. So Paul, I will say thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your brilliance with us today. I'll end it. You weren't brilliant today. I think you did.
How'd I do?
I think you did a great job, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing that and your great attitude. And I will end as I always do, my friends. Please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Paul. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Jeff.